Your paycheck can go up while your standard of living goes backwards. It's happening right now. Real wages are lower right now on average than they were a year ago. And you tell me what you have seen in prices. There are thousands of videos circulating right now with people talking about inflation, price increases, and the insanity of the world as it relates to economics right now. And there is a lot of misunderstanding about how we got here. And I think that it's important that people understand the real reason why prices are insane. Everybody wants to blame high prices on corporate greed. The grocery store is ripping you off. The oil company is ripping you off. The landlord is ripping you off. And a lot of that is true in a lot of cases. But there is a much bigger story that a lot of people do not understand. And that is that the money itself, the dollar in your wallet, is worth less. It has less purchasing power every single day. And if you don't understand that, then you're never going to understand why almost everything in your life keeps getting more and more expensive. So there are two different things that we need to discuss. The first is legitimate price increases. If a company has higher labor costs, fuel costs, material, or transportation, it has to raise its prices to cover its cost. Or the company simply realizes that it can raise prices because it believes customers will pay and they can blame it on inflation. We know for a fact that this happened during and after COVID. There were legitimate supply problems and legitimate cost increases, but there's also evidence that some companies raise prices beyond their cost increases because the inflationary environment gave them cover to do it. It gave them an excuse. Corporate greed, price gouging, and dynamic pricing are all very real and they are here. But none of those things fully explain the bigger problem. And that is that the unit we use to measure the price of everything, the United States dollar, has been steadily losing purchasing power. Think about it this way. If the price of eggs go up, but everything else stays the same, then eggs simply got more expensive. But when houses, cars, food, healthcare, insurance, education, rent, repairs, and almost everything else rise over decades, we also have to ask a different question. Are all of those things really becoming more valuable, or is it that the money we're measuring it with has become less value? In August of 1971, President Richard Nixon suspended the dollar's convertibility into gold. Now, I want to be clear here. The United States did not have a gold coin standard immediately before 1971. We were operating under the Bretton Woods system, where the dollar was convertible into gold for foreign governments and central banks. But 1971 broke that international link between the U.S. dollar and gold. From that point forward, the dollar became purely a fiat currency, and that means it's not backed by anything other than the full faith and credit of the United States government. Fiat currency depends on discipline, and that is the problem, because the restraint has to come from the people running the system. Congress, presidents, the Treasury, the Federal Reserve. And for decades, our political system has repeatedly demonstrated that it has very little interest in long-term fiscal or monetary discipline. Politicians want to spend money because that's what wins them favor with voters. They want tax cuts without equivalent spending cuts. They want new programs without paying for them, and they want stimulus during recessions, bailouts during crises, and emergency spending during pandemics. Wars are financed through deficits, benefits without sufficient revenue, and almost nobody wants to be the politician who tells voters that eventually the math is going to stop working. Here's the number people need to understand. Using the Consumer Price Index as a measure, $1 in 1971 would require roughly $8.27 today to buy the same general basket of goods. Put another way, the U.S. dollar has lost roughly 88% of its purchasing power since 1971. The dollar that was in your pocket in 1971 is now worth 12 cents. Think about that. That doesn't mean that ending gold convertibility alone caused every bit of the inflation since 1971. We had oil shocks, we had wars, supply shocks happen, productivity changed, globalization happened, taxes and regulations changed, housing shortages developed, corporate pricing behavior changed. There are so many forces involved. But the larger point is that our monetary system now depends on political and institutional discipline, and our government has repeatedly run enormous deficits deficits and accumulated debt across administrations controlled by both political parties. If a politician has spent decades voting for deficit spending, unfunded programs, unpaid for tax cuts, bailouts, emergency packages, or budgets that permanently spend more than the government collects, they are part of the problem. Republican, Democrat, Congress, White House, the names change, but the debt keeps climbing, and the public argument stays focused on the price tag at the grocery store instead of the value of the money in your pocket. Again, this does not let corporations off the hook. A corporation can absolutely exploit an inflationary environment, and they're doing it right now. If everybody expects prices to rise, businesses have more room to keep testing higher prices. Some companies are passing along costs, some are protecting margins, some are now using increasingly sophisticated dynamic pricing systems to figure out exactly what consumers will tolerate. Think about that. When you go into certain Walmarts now, they will scan your face, you scan the price with your phone because there's no price posted on the meat, and then the price you pay is determined by Walmart on the spot based on the socioeconomic profile that they have for you. These companies are going to push prices right up until the point where people stop buying anything. But corporate pricing power and monetary inflation are not the same thing. And this is the key thing that people need to really understand. There's plenty of blame for the corporations, but the United States government still shares the vast majority of the blame for why prices are doing what they are doing. The other is much more insidious, and it is about the purchasing power of the currency itself, and you need to understand both. Because if we spend all of our time arguing about whether the grocery store made an extra percentage point of margin while ignoring decades of deficit, debt accumulation, monetary expansion, and declining purchasing power, we're arguing about one piece of the problem while ignoring the foundation underneath it. The uncomfortable truth is that inflation is a hidden tax on people who hold and earn dollars. Listen to that again. The government inflating the money supply and devaluing your currency is virtually the same thing as them raising taxes, but never letting you know, and you never see it in your paycheck. Your paycheck can go up while your standard of living goes backwards. It's happening right now. Real wages are lower right now on average than they were a year ago. And you tell me what you have seen in prices. Are prices lower than they were a year ago? Of course they aren't. Your savings account balance can stay exactly the same while its purchasing power steadily declines. You can get a raise and still be poorer in real terms. And the people responsible are not limited to one president, one Congress, one political party, or one corporation. This has been built over decades, and almost every political leader who refused to seriously confront deficits, debt, monetary discipline, and the long-term purchasing power of the United States dollar has contributed to the problem. So yes, question corporate pricing, question price gouging, dynamic pricing, question monopolistic power, but don't stop there. You have to ask the bigger question, and that is, what is happening to my money itself? Because sometimes the price is going up, and sometimes the ruler that we're using to measure the price is shrinking, and both of those things are occurring right now. And here's what I want you to understand. You don't have to buy a car today. You don't have to go to the grocery store or swipe your credit card or spend one single cent. You can sit at home, go to bed, do absolutely nothing, and while you're sleeping, the purchasing power of every dollar you work for is being quietly eroded. Your savings, your paycheck, your retirement, every dollar you've traded hours of your life to earn. That is why inflation matters. It's not just higher prices. It is the slow destruction of the value of your work. Your government is robbing you while you sleep, whether you spend a single cent today or not. And until Americans understand that, we will keep screaming at the price tag while ignoring the very people who are destroying the value of the money that we go out and earn. Because you can't protect yourself from a system that you don't understand.